started, and this is a virtual meeting because of COVID. Is there any public comment before we get started? Any public comment? All right. Well, we wanted to welcome. We're now full complement, which is not true of every commission in Arlington County. So, John, we wanted to welcome you. This is your first meeting. Thank you so much. And would you like to say a few words, John, just to introduce yourselves, just to remind people? I know you had visited a couple of times, but we'd love to have you unmute and say hello to everybody. Oh, you're still muted somehow. You're double muted, John, probably. Let's see.
Better?
That's better.
Oh, okay, I have no idea why that was off. I had to click it mute again and then unmute it, but whatever works to get that working. So, all right, glad to meet you all. My name's John Johnson, and I look forward to working with you all. I currently work for the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC for its short name, as a financial/data analyst, where I work with a lot of the regulations on energy rates, wrangling big data, and the security of that data, which is kind of what pushed me towards this commission right now with the cybersecurity. A lot of my background prior to FERC was in finance. My bachelor's was in accounting. My master's degree is in public administration. I'm also a Marine Corps veteran. And I think that's a quick summary of what I've got going on right now. So again, look forward to meeting you all in person and working with you all.
Well, we're delighted. We're delighted to have you. And Andrea was particularly happy to hear that cyber interest. Did you see her smile, John?
Says, yeah. That and the fact that you're a Marine. So I'm retired Army. So that's good to know.
The cybersecurity is a big deal. I think in all government agencies right now, certainly ours. So I mean.
Right. So that's wonderful. Good. Well, Tim, welcome. You we're getting a little here. Let me just here we go. There, we're getting a little feedback there. Tim, thanks for giving us an update. As I mentioned to you, we will receive a briefing from county staff soon to be, date to be determined about where we are in the broadband study. But you have been following this so closely that I thought it would really help the commission if you could give us your update of where we are and what some of the questions remaining on the table. So thank you so much for coming and being willing to share.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mary, for having us. I'm glad to share. I just did a really simple PowerPoint so people have some visual.
Oh, good. Okay.
So it's okay if I can share.
Absolutely, should be able to. Do you have privileges? Are you okay?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, great. No problem.
Okay. All right, can you see this?
We can.
Okay,
we can, and it's not in slideshow mode at the moment, but we can see it.
Oh, it's not in slideshow.
No, it's in. We see it on the left-hand side, so that's we can see. We can see the slide easily, but if you want to, if that's easier, but just wanted to let you know.
You may just need to go to full screen.
Huh.
Yeah, we're a tech commission. We're really helpful.
Can you see it moving now, at least? Or?
We see.
Yeah, Mary, I do. I have the full first slide in full screen.
On full screen. Okay,
yeah.
Go forth then, Tim. Could be the way I've got configured. Go ahead.
If people aren't seeing it, just let me know and I'll try to do it. But anyway, okay. Well, thank you, everyone. My name is Tim Dempsey. I'm with an advocacy group here in Arlington, All Fiber. I've spoken with the commission in the past, but our group has been advocating for the county to in a nutshell, I'm advocating for the county to take some bold steps in order to address basically fully the issue of digital divide in the county, and also just take some very proactive steps in order to bring the county's digital infrastructure, put it on a very steady footing for it to meet future data needs and future technology needs, and to basically make sure that everybody has access to qualitative high-speed internet that's affordable to them, particularly people in the lower income, small business and like. So we've been advocating that the county board form what's called a broadband authority, which is a legal vehicle to allow the county to make, from our point of view, better use of its existing network. And on top of that, we've asked them to conduct a full-scale feasibility study of building a citywide fiber to the home network. So we've been advocating for this. The county has, through fits and starts, finally kind of responded to that. And they have put out this RFP that you were supposed to be briefed on. So I just wanted to basically just share our kind of experience of the RFP. We've actually haven't been very active because we're waiting for the RFP winner to be chosen, and now I guess we're waiting for the RFP for itself to be finished. We also wait kind of with bated breath, like you all, for the formal briefing to the board and to you guys as well, to see what the county staff has to say about it. But in any event, as far as what we think about it, we have had some problems with it, even though on the whole we've been very happy that the county has engaged us and tried to take into account our our kind of our perspectives and our kind of wishes for this thing. But that said, these were the things that we kind of noticed and we found that were not necessarily basically left us with something to desire, I guess. So the first thing that we had a problem with was that the fact that the timing was kind of bad. The county dropped a fairly complex request for proposal in mid-December.
Just a second, John. Do you have a question?
Yeah,
are you moving the
Yeah, I'm
slides,
still seeing
Tim?
slide 1. I was just wondering.
Are you
if
moving
Tim
the
was-
slides, Tim? Or?
Yeah, this is very
Okay.
strange. I wonder
know.
if
I just saw your mouse. Your mouse is on our screen now.
Yeah, we see the mouse.
okay.
There, now we see it.
That's good.
Okay,
Now
I'll
we're
just
with you. Good.
If this is the I'll just keep it like this. I don't know why. Okay, I'll just move forward like this then. That's fine in this view. I'm not
Thank
sure
you.
why it's not showing the whole thing. But in any event, the first thing then was timing. They dropped a very complex RFP in mid-December with a kind of meet and greet with the vendors to ask questions during Christmas week. And then they had a deadline of January 20th, which was just not very much turnaround time given how much what they're asking for in terms of this RFP. And then the other thing is that the county board members had initially told our group, our fiber, that we'd be able to provide input. And when we tried to do that, we did it directly to the bidding office, and then they turned around and said, okay, well, the official feedback can only be submitted through the vendor portal, but not being vendors, it was not really, we weren't able to actually provide feedback using that portal. We tried to set ourselves up as a kind of phony vendor that would be submitting it, but even that really didn't work. So so there's two things we didn't like about the process. As far as the RFP itself, from our perspective, and we talked with a lot of like veteran consultants that we know that have done community broadband work and asked for their feedback, which is what we were trying to distill and send to the county. Most of them said that because the RFP was just asking for very comprehensive surveys of several universes of potential subscribers, and then on top of that wanted to break down that data by various demographic groups, which they said would not really produce meaningful results, basically because of the degree of surveying that would need to take place, and just basically their experience in doing that kind of work in other cities. And they thought that and I'd say on top of that, the county seemed to be asking the vendors or potential consultant to kind of redo work that had already done, looking at researching the digital divide in the county. I mean, because the county already knows where the problem areas are with respect to the unserved or underserved. So it didn't really make so much sense to us that they were asking that to be redone. And then I guess the kind of biggest thing for us was that there was a kind of a lack of focus. They were asking the consultant or potential consultant to provide them with, several very different models of providing service or for dealing with the problem. And some of the other kind of consultants we spoke with said that, given the county's, it's a dense community with the semi-urban, very complex infrastructure. So that, most of them said that, providing individual models to try to deal with all of those variables really would just be very complex and, probably not leave much money left for more detailed engineering if you actually wanted to do something like build out throughout the county. I just kind of wanted to show, like, we had submitted to the county board members and to staff the Hillsborough RFP, and theirs was basically 2 pages. And they basically said outright that they wanted to look at a fiber to the home model that would be throughout the city and that they would provide service through it. And then they had, 6 things that they kind of asked the consultant to do. And they got back a pretty decent report that they ended up using in the end. So it was probably overly complex, but what the considerations were on the part of the county for why they made it as complex as they did, we're not really privy to those details. The RFP winners that they announced, one is Televate, I guess, is the actual winner, but they will be partnering with Strategic Networks Group. I went on and perused the Televate website. It looks pretty superficial. It doesn't look like, they've written some reports. Most of everything that they've done has been kind of more focused on limited time evolution, LTE networks. Strategic Networks Group has a somewhat broader portfolio, and we were familiar with them, and they have done some good work on community broadband, so that's somewhat encouraging from our perspective. But it remains to be seen exactly, what they produce, given what the county has kind of asked them in the RFP. And the last thing is that on the broadband authority front, we'd asked the county board to, regardless of the RFP, we'd ask them to just go ahead and form an authority now. But they seem to still be tying that decision to the issue of municipal broadband. Basically, if they come back with the RFP comes back and recommends municipal broadband, then they'll consider the authority, if they won't consider it beforehand. Obviously, we think this is a mistake because the authority would allow them, regardless of the outcome, the authority would allow Department of Technology Services and Connect Arlington to make better use of the network in general right now. Most other localities that have a dark fiber network or a public network that's similar to our Connect Arlington, they've already formed authorities for this very reason. So we're not really sure why the county continues to kind of push back on doing that. And the other thing about that is that what we think is kind of short-sighted in that regard is that the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative, which is the state's broadband investment fund, has received a huge influx of federal funds, and some of those are governed by different rules than the state itself has set out in a sort of narrow fashion. And the county would need a broadband authority essentially to apply for any of those funds in the future. And those funds are going to be available, now basically. So that's it. Sorry, I realize that's not a little probably short on details and maybe not extraordinarily insightful, but that's that's the degree of detail we can provide right now in terms of what we've seen while following the issue. So I don't know if people have questions, I'll try to answer them, but
yeah, we do. I'm sure
okay.
we have questions. Thank you, Tim. No, this gives us a really good common understanding of where we are. So that was exactly what I wanted you to do. John, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Did the RFP ask the consultants to look at various different governance models for a potential broadband authority? Because I asked because I think that's one of the critical factors for success, right? Is the governance structure of that broadband authority, who's in charge, who's on the board, those kinds of considerations. So
The answer is no. What they have asked is basically they have, I think they asked for feedback or a model. Like they have like 5 templates or models basically they're asking for in section 2, I think. And one of them is to form a municipal network using a wireless service authority, the quote unquote broadband authority. And then period. That's it. And then it goes to the next model. So they haven't really asked them to drill down on that and look at that from that perspective. I mean, that goes to the point that we were trying to make to them, which is that it's just not focused enough. Like I said, if you're looking at some of the other networks or cities that have done like a municipal network, whether it was run by the city itself or done in partnership and all that, those were hyper focused. They knew what model they wanted and they just asked them to study that, and that's it. And that was when we talked to some veteran, and we actually, once the RFP dropped, we reached out to several vendors ourselves that we knew had done successful municipal networks and asked for them to bid or at least give us feedback on what they thought about the RFP, and all of them said no. Several of them said they wouldn't touch it because it wasn't focused enough. It was just asking for a lot of complexity and a lot of data that they didn't think would actually be useful to doing what we would like them to do. So anyway, they did not ask for any kind of detailed study as the authority, kind of municipal broadband. I mean, they asked them to consider it as a model and to provide them information on a model, but they wanted them in drafting all that. They wanted them to incorporate all of that statistical data that's in part 1 that looks at all these, all these different demographics. They're asking for a very complex product, and whether like I said, none of the vendors that we talked to should necessarily be considered the absolute authorities on this, but a lot of them thought that it was not going to produce could produce the result that the county might want, because there's a lot of and if you read some of the actual, I read the additional document the county published with FAQs, and a lot of the vendors clearly asked them asked the county how they expected them to gather data on what apartment buildings or multi-unit buildings have exclusive contracts and things like that, because they said that data can be very difficult to gather. It's important obviously for for building these networks. It'd be nice to know that, but in terms of having to go to all the individual building owners, track down, I mean, not all of them are owned by a single entity. They have complex subsidiaries that do property management and all that, and getting them to give you an answer is difficult, I think. So in any event, all this goes to say that the RFP, what they're asking a vendor to do is really complex, and whether what data the vendor collects might not necessarily be useful in determining the success of the network, or so.
So you have another question queued up, Phil?
Yes. Hi, Tim. Thank you very much. I'm wondering if any of our peer counties, for example, Fairfax, have already got their broadband authority organized and applied for and possibly even received some of the federal money under the Virginia initiative.
I do not know about Fairfax. There's only there are multiple. I think there's almost like 50 now in the state, and all of them are pursuing slightly different models. Some of them have third-party partnerships. Some are doing open access networks. Some, of the two that are providing, or there's 2 or 3 that are providing service directly in the kind of municipal type model. And so all of them have been, buying for money. The state level process has been very difficult at this point because just the criteria they've used to dole out the money has really been kind of limiting in terms of who you can get it. But that fortunately has changed as of this session. They've incorporated a lot of money from the federal government, and the Treasury guidelines that was accompanying a lot of that money, basically had said that the states can't play games with this money and pick and choose who gets to do it based on whether there's a large, cable provider there that doesn't want them to get money. So there's more opportunity to get that money. I don't know what all the other, I'm not aware of whatever all the other areas are doing. I'm not familiar with what Fairfax is currently doing, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, do you know when we expect now that it has been awarded, do we are we supposed to get something this fall? What's your sense about when, or is it next year? What's your sense about timing?
I do not know. That is one thing that is not clear to me. I did not. That might have been something that I'm assuming that the RFP probably did have a timeline. I must have just. I'm blanking on it right now.
That's all right.
I think I would expect it would be about a year. I wouldn't think it'd be less than that. I mean,
from the time of award.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, like I said, I mean, there's a ton of complexity built in there. I would be surprised if they could turn around
sooner than that.
But
and you mentioned 50 broadband authorities. When we looked at this, remember, Frank, we looked at this a while back. There were not 50. Can you give us a sense about where that how, for example, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, is this all is the majority of these authorities been formed in the last 5 years?
Yes, they have. They've been sprouting up like crazy. Particularly once more federal money was coming out. I mean, more have been forming, and more are forming as like large conglomerates, like the Virginia. There's a large ring now in Virginia Beach, where there's several communities down there, like Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Newport News. There's several cities down there that are kind of basically want to build a big ring, open access network. So I think all of them formed formed their own individual one, and then there's one that links them all. But they're taking advantage of like that. There's a new kind of like what they call it, internet hotel that they put there on the coast. Big transatlantic cable, I think. But they're kind of trying to leverage that to improve their internet connection in that area. So as a result, there's been a lot that have been formed recently. And I mean, just generally speaking, because of the way the law works in Virginia, the only way you can do anything outside of trying to incentivize the existing providers is to form your own. Like I said, I mean, Arlington wants to make better use of it. I mean, we've had conversations with Jack Belcher, and he says, oh, we can't do some projects because some of it needs to be put on private property, and we're not allowed to do that under the law. But if they had the authority, they could. I mean, and this is why we're so frustrated. The board seems to be so skittish about forming one. But
Mary,
Jonathan,
Mike. Can I get in the queue?
Sorry, Mike, didn't see you in the queue. Jonathan, and then you, okay?
Sure, and I don't think I can be seen in the queue because I'm audio only.
That's right. Yeah, I did not see you in the queue, so do speak up. But Jonathan, and then Mike. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yes, sir. Hi, I'm just a minute late. Thanks, Tim, for doing this.
It's okay.
We're talking about funding under ARPA, I take it, right? Is that what we're dealing with here?
No, I don't
Treasury.
think Oh, yeah, under ARPA. Yes. Sorry, I was thinking of.
Is it?
I was thinking of the rural one. No, ARPA. Yes.
Yeah, that was actually Warner's deal. So, can you send around the PowerPoint? Was my only question, maybe to Mary, she can get around to us, just because it'd be helpful to have that, I think, for the commission. That was my only request.
Oh,
The
okay.
PowerPoint that you shared with us, Tim.
Okay.
Yeah, if
Yep.
you'd send that to me, that'd be great. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. Mike, you're up.
Yeah.
And then,
Hey,
and
Tim,
then,
I want to start. Tim, I wanted to start by just saying congratulations on getting the county to put the RFP out at all. I'm not sure they would have done that without your nudge. And then I wanted to piggyback on John's governance question. I have been perplexed about the 99-year lease that the county did with its biggest landlord, and particularly the aspect of that contract that calls for Arlington Connect to be jointly managed between that private for-profit entity and the county, which is obviously a local government entity. Now, it's easy to dismiss that concern because, you know, certain strands of fiber will be used by certain parties, but the management of the overall thing, it seems there's already a commitment that would have to be navigated by whatever the governance structure of this utility would be. And I'm in favor of the utility. I don't understand the risk being avoided by not setting it up at all. And I go to what now is kind of a standard concern of mine, that the county enjoys appearing to be fixing a problem and not so much to be accountable for the problem solution. So is there a governance piece that would have to navigate the existing commitment between the biggest landlord in the county and the county?
So from what I understand with that, I think the county's attorneys actually had raised similar issues. I think that they thought this was a major legal issue, which is why I was surprised that they went through it, because we went through with it because we had been told, you know, prior that, you know, the reason that the Broadband Authority was, you know, so radioactive for them was all the legal questions around it. And I think we did a lot of research on that and talked with actual other lawyers and municipalities that you know, had dealt with them, and so I think we allayed a lot of their fears on that. But I mean, I agree. Like I honestly, I think that if they had formed a broadband authority, you know, prior to this and had put in place and done some feasibility studies to begin with to start looking at using the authority to provide service in those areas, I think, you know, that would have been preferable outcome than what they're doing right now. But as regarding, you know, what they're going to do, you know, and maybe you're raising a good question. Maybe this has actual, maybe this has direct implications for forming the authority. But you know, with Amazon in town, with JBG, their landlord, I think, you know, the county is highly swayed by what they want. But some of those nuances are kind of lost on me in terms of how that deal would affect any kind of broader attempt by the county to set up a new utility through the authority. So
yeah,
don't have.
I'm certainly not expert on either, but the new authority would appear to be a third party to an existing arrangement.
Yeah, I mean, like I mean, it seems to me the thing that would make the most sense to me, regardless of, you know, and I've said this probably 10,000 times on these calls with you guys, you know, like, you know, from what we heard from the other people who have set up the authorities, you know, they said that, like, the thing that would make the most sense for Arlington would be to set up the authority and transfer all the assets to the authority, because the authority has full legal, you know, permission to do whatever it wants with those assets, whereas the county does not, because it's set it up under a different part of the law. But it can transfer those assets without really much issue at all. And then it could have been doing a lot more with the network. And frankly, it would have had to set up a new board to govern it. It could have been the county board itself if they wanted to appoint themselves. I don't know that it would have been necessarily smart, but you know, everybody else could have stayed in place. I mean, the people running Connect Arlington now would just be running Connect Arlington, but just under the authority. So, but I mean, and they can still do that. But you know, I would hasten, or I would implore you all to maybe kind of pose some of those questions to them more directly, to the board and to the staff, because I think they need to hear it from more people, and that happens to be in your wheelhouse. And they might listen to you more than they listen to us on that. I don't know.
No, as Mike said, you were instrumental, and I don't think we'd be talking about this if you and your team hadn't pushed this, Tim. So.
Oh, thank you.
All right, and so thank you. And Phil, that was an old hand, right? You didn't have. Did you have a new question, or were you? Yeah. Okay. Well, Tim, thanks so much, and obviously we will await where we are and what the timeline is, and we'll keep each other posted. Really appreciate you and Charles giving us an update and the benefit of you're following this really carefully and closely, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you guys, Tim.
All right, you take care.
Thanks.
All right. All right, so John, you are up on the list. We wanted to hear where we are on the Safety Innovation Zone Task Force. I know you gave us the kind of the overview, but just wanted a status report of where you are and what the next steps are.
Sure. So two major developments or meaningful developments since the last time we met. Last time I talked about this one, I've actually seen the data that's coming out of these devices. I've had a chance to look at the columns, the data dictionary, the actual values on the data. And as expected, nothing in it gave me any concern when it comes to a privacy perspective. Now, obviously, it's what's being provided to me, so I'm not looking at the actual outputs myself, but I've got every reason to believe that what's being provided to me is, in fact, what's being output. So that's good, right? That the devices are, in fact, outputting metadata that is doesn't pose any conceivable privacy risk from my perspective. So that's one. Two, there's a draft report. There's a couple versions of the draft report. First version came out. We provided comment back on it. A second version has come out. I provided comment back on it. I think at this point, my recommendation, and I think this recommendation was also made by the other member from EPAC, the Emergency Preparedness Advisory Commission, Sharon Valencia, who's the chair of that commission. Our recommendation and request is that draft report be circulated to both commissions prior to being finalized and issued to the board. I think the feedback I got was that was not the plan, and so I referred that to Mary for her purview and discussion with our liaison, and I await the results of that. But I say that I feel uncomfortable putting my name on a report that indicates that my participation in the group was as a member of this commission without having this commission have the opportunity to comment and provide input and updates to that report. So I'm hopeful we'll be able to issue a joint collaborative report, including policy recommendations as a result of the lessons learned, which I think is the most important part of the report. The project particulars are interesting and valuable, but they're most valuable in terms of what they tell us about future government policy and what we should learn from this pilot program, in my view.
Yes,
So,
and agreed. And it's also important for us to follow process of having the commissions engaged in that. Indeed, if this is a setting precedent for other innovation learnings. Jackie, did you have it? Thanks, John. Thanks for the update, and I will keep you posted. Just want to make sure that that we could level set and understand where we are. Jackie, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. As the person who represented EPAC for the first half of the year on this, and am no longer the official representation, I have been attending all of the meetings as a member of the public. And I must say, as a member of the public, this is the most unsatisfactory participation from a public point of view. And this new decision that they're not going to allow the draft to even circulate to commission members, where I think it should be available to the public, is I think it's not even legally sustainable personally. And I will definitely be advocating for it to be made public. I don't think, unless they've added something since I saw the first version, and some of this we've been working on all year, there wasn't anything in there that would in any way jeopardize privacy by making it public. And I think that's what they're trying to claim, that somehow or other they could consult with two people and then not let those two people to represent the public, and then not let those two people convey this to the public. I don't think you can issue a report that has public consultation that's not available to the public. So I strongly agree with John's recommendation and with the two commissions that this should not go forward representing itself as a report with participation by these commissions unless the commissions are able to see it. And as I said, I think if and when we see it, I think our next step is going to be, we're going to want to advocate for it to be made public, not just, somehow, because there's no process by which you can have a closed review by a commission.
Yeah, and I believe the intent, and just to clarify, was to issue it directly to the board, at which point it would become public, but there would be no opportunity for the commissions to provide input as part of the report to the board.
I'd like to weigh in when there's a chance.
Oh, okay.
Now,
Sure.
just one more thing is they did say, at least, and maybe we heard differently. I thought what I heard was the draft when complete was going to the manager, and whether the manager decided to pass that on to anyone, including the board, was up to him, and it might never become public.
Yeah, I'd have
That
additional
I
problems.
objected to.
I have additional problems with that course of action, similar to yours, Jackie. So,
Thank you.
So we're not clear about what the path is at the moment, right? So it could be either it goes to the county manager and it stays there, or it goes to the board. If we are current, go ahead, John.
And I would add, I don't see anything in the content that is controversial in the least bit.
I agree. Yeah.
So it's quite perplexing.
Well, for me, it's a precedent, right? I do not want someone asking a chair of a commission to appoint someone and then have the expectation that the commission will not be able to access the draft report. I do not want that to be a precedent. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, Mary, I couldn't agree more with what's being said here. And you may recall, we've endured this misuse before. You and I personally got the manager to create a broadband and digital services task force for the purpose of creating a report that would inform the board about its governance responsibilities in the digital future of Arlington. We were promised that we would get a draft of that. It never came. The manager published a report that I do think benefited from the association with myself personally and with the commission, even though the final report was never reviewed by us and never shared by us. And that void that sits in our governance, in our county governance structure between the manager and the board seems to be used opportunistically to avoid accountability. So I couldn't agree more that this question merits public attention. I mean, that's what our commission is for. And if there's a desire to avoid that, then we should shut the commissions down. And I'm saying that in the extreme. Now, more to the point, I'm not impressed. I'm relieved, but I'm not impressed that we have a project that doesn't do any of the harms we worried about, because I've never seen anything that convinced me there are any benefits worth spending as much county time and staff on this as there is. I understand the value to the various vendors involved to have a test bed and to have a sort of referenceable customer, but I've never seen a benefit associated with this project that would make me want to go through all the labor that's been applied to it to avoid privacy risks. And the last time I was present to hear a conversation about this, we were trying to determine whether people jaywalked in Clarendon, and I'm sure from casual observation, they do all the time. And so I think we're still lacking the fundamental, what is the benefit of this program? Not, is it harmful to privacy, and is it worth citizens knowing about? I mean, if there's county staff time being applied to this, then it should be fair game. Why did we apply the staff to this?
Yeah, and Mike,
Well,
to the benefit,
go
sorry,
ahead, John.
Mary, to the
No, go
to the
ahead, John.
benefit question, I've tried to stay in my lane and in the Tech Commission's lane and not focus and focus on the question of the benefit, because I feel that's more the EPAC's domain, right? Because this is an emergency preparedness public safety use case. I will say that they are trying to prove out if there can be a benefit, is I think the current state of affairs. And I think we may learn that there is, and we may learn that there isn't, but I think it's too early to say one way or the other.
All right.
Okay.
Any other comment? We will keep you apprised. I think I've got a sense of where we are. So thank you, John, for the update. I just wanted to make sure I was, and I just have one question as to where the path is. That's the only thing I want to clarify. But other than that, I'll keep you posted. But thanks. Thanks
Mary,
for, yeah, Mike.
this is Mike. I sent out by email just a couple hours before this meeting a piece that I think is related to the Clarendon project, and that is a statement that was made at the board meeting that basically at least one member of the board sees no value whatsoever in trying to protect Arlington citizens and visitors from surveillance that's basically unregulated or uncontrolled. I found that distressing. It was in the context of surveillance at the park that Amazon is going to own and the county is going to have access to.
Right.
At what used to be called Crystal City. But so I just wanted to see if people had received that and how they interpret this, because I mean, what Christian Dorsey said at the board meeting, as reported by Arlington Now, would suggest that none of our many attempts to advise the county about treating privacy as a human right, even with the legal difficulties of that, has any merit or any utility. I found the quote, as I said, distressing, and it was in the context of the park that Amazon is donating. But it's easy to say, well, what are we doing then in Clarendon if the board isn't believing it's feasible to affect any form of surveillance, to regulate it in any way?
Comments? I assume I did get the email, and I assume others did as well. Comments?
I did. Mike, can you send the link to the actual AR Now story, because that wasn't included? I'd love to be able to go back and watch the video of the board meeting, if possible.
And that was the Saturday board meeting, this past Saturday.
Yeah. And to answer your question directly, John, I could try. I think I kind of came across it as clickbait and just cut out the quote and saved it. I looked at their Arlington Now website to see if I could, use a link to it, and I didn't quickly find that, so I just went with the block copied quote. Their site seems to be more about today's news and less about archiving past stories, but maybe I just didn't spend enough time on the site to find it.
And Jackie?
Yeah, there also was a similar comment actually made earlier in the context of the Clarendon project, and that quote was Libby Garvey, and she said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I would have a hard time finding it, but she basically said, well, we're already being surveilled by everybody, so there's like nothing more we can do. It's already like, horses out of the barn or whatever.
I point out
So
in
I think
response
there
to
is a very fatalistic attitude.
in response to that fatalistic attitude, and I know I'm not telling anybody here anything they don't know, but for the public and for the record, that the choice by Apple to remove the advertising ID and set do not track as default for all apps costs Facebook $10 billion a year instantaneously, according to their earnings call after that decision was made. So there's a great many things we can do to improve people's privacy. So we should not be fatalistic about it.
I agree, and I actually believe that the industry that profits from eroding privacy has been on the field, writing a narrative, that would make a politician feel like they were fighting a losing cause and they'll look like a dinosaur to the public. I don't think that's true, and that's why I just specifically cited the New York City body of policy, because there's only two possibilities here. One is we in Arlington aren't really looking because we don't want to, because we don't want to upset a certain class of constituents, or New York is wasting its time, and so is San Francisco, and so is Seattle, and so is Boston, and so is Raleigh, and you know what I mean? So it's just kind of absurd on its face to say there's no opportunity for local government to do anything here. That just isn't consistent with the current reality in the United States of America, where many municipalities have taken very strong and thoughtful action. Now, obviously, they're not successful 100% of the time, but I sure would prefer to be trying to do the right thing than to wave a white flag.
Michael?
Yes, I have a leading question, which is, has any jurisdiction anywhere in the United States attempted to impose a tax on users of individual private data? In other words, treat it as a revenue stream? It seems to me that would get the board's attention if the county could make money by charging companies that use this data. When I went to the Arlington Now site and read the article, all of the comments, or 90% of the comments, were all about higher assessments, and there's a great concern about money in the county and in the United States. And if you could somehow tie the privacy issue to money, I think there'd be less fatalism and more opportunism on the part of the government. I know that's way out of the box, but
it's a good question, Michael.
It has, Mike, we talked about that Shoshana Zuboff book, and she mentioned it.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me jumping back in, I'll say I think that's a useful idea, but it's almost necessarily at the national level. And I would say Arlington is dependent on real estate tax revenues, I'd say in large part because it's so hard for a company to deny that the building exists or to move the building across a geopolitical boundary. And so even though Arlington has an existing business tax on durable equipment and so forth, and in theory, you could try to impute a value on a large data set of personally identifiable information, I think it would be, I think it'd be very hard for the result of that to be anything but the owner of the data moves it outside the jurisdiction. Until you got to like a national or maybe even multinational scheme. So I like the theory on that, but I don't know at local government if that would be one of your best avenues. I mean, I'm on the much smaller matter of can the local government protect the public space from private surveillance? I think the answer to that is they could do more than they show a willingness to do. And other jurisdictions have certainly done so. And the tax part gets much more complicated much more quickly, in my opinion.
And I know Frank has a question. I just wanted Tim, one of the things Tim added to the discussion in the chat was, I don't think Dylan's rule would allow the county to do that without
the
a
Dillon
change in
rule.
Richmond.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
something to think about. Frank, and then Michael, is that a new hand or an old hand?
It's an old hand. I'll lower it.
It's an old hand. Okay. Okay, Frank?
Yeah, no, my comment was, I think we saw from the privacy forum that governmental entities are likely to get in on the other side in selling the personal identifiable data. I mean, Florida is selling yes, so I think that's probably the greater danger. That's going to be I think that's where the real money is.
And the DMV, Frank.
Right.
Right?
Yes, that's what was, what, $70 million, I think?
Yes, I think at least 62 million, right. Okay. All right, so Mike, do you want any other closing comment to the conversation on this topic?
Well, I'll say just a very loose end. I mean, at the forum, privacy forum that was just stated, one citizen repeatedly asked the straightforward question, does the county share personally identifiable information with any third parties? Those are my words, not theirs. And I wouldn't matter much whether they were selling it or giving it away. But I mean, did anybody from the county ever see fit to answer that question in a definitive way?
We were told no. Frank and I had that conversation, and we were told no, we do not. But I like your idea, Mike. What we have not dropped is, I really want that to be on our website, right, on the Tech Commission website as a frequently asked question, so that we can reference it. Okay, so this is not the last time we're going to visit this this question, but it's a big one. It's a big one. So Frank, I will legislative update.
All right, well, actually, I'll take it out of order, but I think maybe it is apropos to our discussion. A bipartisan group of congressional leaders from the Senate and House Commerce Committees are negotiating long-stalled consumer data privacy legislation. So I think the Facebook, now Meta, and I think the name may have been changed on purpose there to try to... Anyway, I think that's helping to, and heard tales of the, knowing harm from the some of the social platforms there, but I think that's helping to drive a bipartisan solution. And actually, a bunch of the tech companies are getting behind federal legislation, because otherwise they're going to be facing a patchwork of different regulations, as we've seen already, California, Virginia, among others, so I think that is, an encouraging sign that we do see some active negotiations going on, legislation there in that field.
Frank, is that bipartisan?
Yes, it said yes. That was the report I saw.
Okay.
Let's see. Back to broadband again. The FCC's new strategic plan, released March 29, prioritizes bringing affordable, reliable, high-speed broadband to 100% of the U.S., and the FCC plans to take affirmative steps to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And then, I believe separately, the FCC later in April issued its Equity Action Plan, which is primarily an outline of its efforts already underway to close the digital divide. The plan will include adoption of rules to facilitate equal access to broadband service by November 15th of 2023, which is a congressional mandate. A bipartisan group of bipartisan group of House members is working on cybersecurity legislation aimed at implementing recommendations set forth by the congressionally mandated Cyberspace Solarium Commission in proposals for major cloud service providers to protect critical infrastructure. And pulled from today's headlines, the FCC is proposing to adopt rules at its May meeting to require all international gateway telecom providers to comply with anti-spoofing and robocall rules. Also this past month, the FCC has indicated that it's teamed up with a number of state attorneys general, I should say, to help fight robocalls. So we're seeing an increased attention to that continuing problem. Anyway, that's my report for this one.
Any questions for Frank? Any follow-up, any clarification for him? Those were all to our agenda, Frank, really. Yeah.
Yes.
So glad you're monitoring. The next thing we wanted to begin to have some conversation about is the legislative priorities. They will ask us officially to submit probably right around July 4th. It's usually the beginning of July when they start looking, when the county members start looking at but we wanted you to have an opportunity to think about that. Just to give you a reminder, last year we looked at ensuring electronic medical records are standardized for public health functions, bridging the digital divide, access to high-speed internet, the digital records management, and then we also looked at the reasonable fees for telephone services to the incarcerated. And one came up, I think, last meeting about requesting that we have this virtual option, because one of the things Frank and I were talking about is how good the attendance is in this virtual forum, that it makes it much easier for people to engage, and it's also easier for our speakers as well. So we really, obviously it's originally done because of COVID, but certainly we'd like the option to do virtual. So that was one of the items. And John, I think you had an item you were talking about, just might want to introduce now, and then maybe in May have something a little bit more concrete. Did you want to introduce the FedRAMP?
Yeah. Thanks, Mary. So
Mhm.
this is kind of a winding road, but after our meeting last time in the briefing from the Department of Parks and Recreation, I went looking for the public contract. I couldn't find it, and so I'd actually like to request, Mary, if we could request our county liaison to provide us the public contract for that, the publicly available contract information for that system, with that contract with Vermont Systems. I came across a different RFP, however, for the new enterprise resource planning system that had been issued, and in going through it, one of the things that came up to me was that there was questions in there about kind of the cybersecurity controls around the systems that the potential vendors might be proposing, or it wasn't the enterprise resource planning, sorry, it was the payment system, enterprise payment system, and it got me thinking that the county attempting to vet cybersecurity of different commercial off the shelf products is really tax on their resources, and that in the federal space there's a program called FedRAMP, or the Federal Risk Accountability Modernization Program, which allows agencies to inherit shared controls for cloud services, whether it's software as a service, platform as a service, or as infrastructure as a service. Inherit those controls, share the cost of the auditing and third-party validation and continuous assessments of those systems, and really improves the speed at which agencies can onboard and adopt these services, and reduces kind of the cybersecurity compliance risk and cost associated with these programs. And I went looking, and there's actually a similar program that started by the state of Arizona called State Ramp, trying to do the same thing. And so, not having looked into it much further, my thought is that there may be an opportunity for our legislative agenda, if there's a legislative enabler necessary, to get Virginia on the same path, so that municipalities could benefit from the same kind of approach that the FedRAMP program uses. Not necessarily that program, maybe State Ramp, maybe State Ramp's not the right program, maybe Virginia wants to do its own thing. A lot of different options there, but sending us down in that direction, I think, would be incredibly helpful for municipalities to not have to carry the load themselves, and also but maintain very high standards of compliance and continuous monitoring for cybersecurity. So with that said, I proposed a couple questions that I will put in the chat if I can get it to work for our county liaison, and the responses to these questions may inform our recommendations at the next meeting for our legislative agenda.
Great. Great. So, yeah, has the county evaluated utilizing a shared service for security assessment, authorization, and continuous monitoring for cloud products and services such as FedRAMP or StateRAMP? And if so, what were the results? If not, what might prevent the county from doing so? Is the county evaluated utilizing a shared service?
I think I just duplicated it.
Okay. I was just going to ask. So that's fine. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure, for those who might not be able to see the chat, that we have it in the recording as well. Good. Thanks, John. It's a good, yeah, it's really, it's a good idea. I'm surprised that we don't already have it, right? But that's why. So I thought, oh, that's a very good idea. Other legislative priorities, anything else anybody wants to throw out there? We'll just want you to be thinking about that, and in May we'll really have it get serious about, and then obviously in June finish up our list and be able to give that to Takas.
Mary, Mike again. If you'll bear with me, I'm vaguely recalling in a previous meeting with Tim that John had brought up sort of an omission in the way the need for housing is calculated in Arlington in terms of low-income housing, and the fact that the formula does not make any provision for broadband connectivity. And I can't remember it well enough to say exactly what the proposal would be, but I believe we are in a situation now where, in order to qualify for housing assistance in Arlington, you have to have a very low income. And if you manage to get the low income housing, there's almost no likelihood that you would have the discretionary income to pay for broadband. And so I think the notion was that if we're going to treat it like a utility similar to water and electricity in Arlington, then you would need to reflect the cost in that formula.
Right.
Which I think the housing people wouldn't like, because that would make more people eligible and make the shortfall on housing inventory greater. But there's no sense in just avoiding the problem. You know, if you need a broadband connectivity to function, especially during a pandemic, then the cost of that ought to be reflected in the calculated need for assistance.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for bringing that up, reminding me of that. It was about how we calculate whether or not housing is affordable.
Yeah.
And there's the direct cost of the housing, and then some formulas look at housing plus transportation, because you can say housing might be more expensive, but if you're in a high transit area, that means you don't need a car, and so we can kind of call it affordable, even if the rent's a little bit higher. but factoring in the data access essentially to the utilities, I think would be an important policy piece, because for Arlington County's affordable master plan, if we can get people in affordable housing, but they don't have or get enough housing units that are affordable for the population, but they don't have access to data, then what are they doing? And I think that's frankly one of the big arguments in favor of the advocacy point that Arlington Fiber has been pushing, which is we lower the cost of living. Right, cost of living is the biggest, in my view. I've said it before, I'll say it again, the biggest economic challenge facing Arlington County. And if we can take $40 off someone's utility bills because they've gone from $60 to $20 a month on their internet, $40 on a 4% mortgage is a lot of buying power, right? $40 a month. That's a big difference in the amount of house you can buy. So
it is. And I know we remember when we had the Housing Commission, my counterpart, the chair of the Housing Commission here, we wanted to have that as one of the, high-speed internet being one of the parts of the package. And there's some concern about putting yet another, but I think the case is logical and makes sense. So let's add that to the list.
To me, Mary, it's not so much about adding a regulation about it. It's about including it in our assessments of whether we're successful at providing.
It's how we count, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
It's how we measure success.
Yep. Yeah. Good. No, these are good. So keep thinking about that, and we're going to revisit. We'll put this back on the list, the agenda for May. The update I have is that May 2nd, they just put on May 2nd, there'll be a commission chair meeting. So I'll give you all an update on what that is. And I also asked Louise if she could give us an update from her perspective about where we are in the franchise conversations. As all of you probably recall, we do have a specific role to play, because we do a 60-day whenever this unfolds and we come to that point, the commission has a public session that has to be advertised in a certain amount of time, and then we hold it and have people give feedback and make comment. So we do have a specific role to play. So Louise, thank you very much for coming today and giving us your sense about where things are.
Sure. The original franchise agreement between Verizon and the county ran until from June of 2006 to June of 2021, and it was extended till June of 2022. The county came to me last month and asked if we would concur with another extension through June of 2023, which we did. I'm sure I got the thing back to Richard, I don't know, 10 days ago or whatever. So if the county board hasn't approved it, I'm sure it's pending. So we have the term is now through June of 2023. The county also came to me, I don't know, early in the year and said that they were going to conduct a technical audit. Several jurisdictions have done this, and the county is using a technical auditing firm that I have worked with on audits for other jurisdictions. So, I mean, I know these people, have worked with them. We had a kickoff call early last week, maybe 10 days ago. It all runs together. Basically, I think it's going to be fairly straightforward. The technical auditing firm basically said that they really just needed to do a phone call with one of the head end engineers, and I'm basically running down the person who can have that conversation with them. But my point is that, of course, the county could decide that they, want to have other things that they want to test, but it's my sense that it should be fairly straightforward. So unless something blows up, I don't think that's going to take a great amount of time. So in terms of when we would probably start actually talking, probably I think late summer, in the fall. And I mean, we've obviously got a number of these in the pipeline. We had a number of agreements in Virginia all expired in 2021. And I actually had one being Prince William County that actually, oh no, sorry, Virginia Beach that expired in 2016. And Prince William expired in 2018. And they're just extended and extended. So now we have this huge bolus kind of going through the snake, but it's all good. I'm not going anywhere. And but I think that we'll probably expect that we will probably start talking in earnest in the late summer, early fall. So
That's helpful. That really gives us a thank you. That gives us at least some, the landscape of where we are. So that's much appreciated.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So any other questions, comments? All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Wait, I'm sorry. I did have a comment. I just couldn't find my button fast enough to turn to put my hand up.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
I was for another purpose. I've been going back and rereading CIPs, and of course we're in CIP season right now. And one of the things that I was struck by, which was not what I was supposed to be looking at, was the technology section in each of these. And there is a heavy technology section in the CIP. And it just occurred to me that we're somewhat remiss in focusing all our attention on the operating budget, since the systems are being funded under capital improvement. And they're all under one, and here's a place where they are in one place. They're all under something called technology. And so you can go in there and look, and there's page after page after page. And I don't know that anyone's looking at these. So my thought was, well, we don't have a CIP out and we're not making recommendations to the CIP. We might want to plan in May when it becomes available, and before July when it becomes adopted. We might want to plan to take a look at the technology section of the CIP. It's just a thought. It just seems like it was like tip of the iceberg, and I was almost went down the rabbit hole, but I had a deadline on my other activity. So I pass it on to you.
Okay, and it will be out when can we access? It'll be in May, you think, Jackie?
I think the schedule is they're taking input now. I think the manager puts out his in May, and then there's comment in June, and then it's adopted in July.
Okay.
I think that's the schedule, but I'll go on. It's in a little graphic that they have online. I'll find the graphic and send it to you.
Oh, great. And then Tim, thanks. Tim also added something about the county is adding some criteria about broadband access to its process for evaluating requests for funds for affordable housing loans, which is good. All right, that's good data. Thank you. Thanks, Tim. So glad you stayed on, Tim. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Jackie, I think what you just brought up about the capital plans is crucial. And I think it's also consistent, and I like the credentials of our newest member, because I think we've previously come to the conclusion that our idea of trying to get Arlington to go from, I'll say, maturity level 0 to something higher on its information technology governance and management generally is probably not going to get any traction, but hooking on to the existing approvals of funds availability and funds expenditure is more hopeful. And I think the CIP piece you brought up is the perfect entry point there.
Okay, good. See, we did have a few more comments and questions. Good. Well, good discussions. And we also have for May, we'll have we'll have the minutes from April and March. And we have someone who some of you know, Joe Pelton, will be briefing us on some of the things they're doing with smart cities, and I think you'll find it interesting. Joe was chair of the Tech Commission for a good many years, so he'll be coming home next month. Good. All right. Well, now I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion that we adjourn.
Thank you, John. Second?
I second.
Thank you, Phil. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone want to stay a little more? All right. Thank you all. Some really good conversations and some that we're going to have to revisit. And I will, I look forward to seeing you in May. All right. Take care.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everybody.
Good night, all.
Bye. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.